My thing is
Yes, you're good to
all right.
go.
So, good morning, everybody. Like she said, I'm going to talk about farming this morning. I farm a master plan community in Austin called Steiner Ranch. We have about 4,500 houses in here. I was a broker in Southern California. I started there in 2000 and in 2005 came out to Austin to look at rentals and bought a house here. And then a year later, I was pregnant with twins and decided I wanted to move to Austin. So when I moved to Austin, I moved into that rental house in Steiner Ranch and I was 6 months pregnant with twins. I didn't know anybody in town. And and I had to try to figure out how to restart my business in a new town, not knowing anybody with two newborns at home. And so I had farmed my condo complex in Southern California. So I got here and was like, let's just, do it again here. And so I'm going to talk to you guys today about how I did that. I'm going to give you guys some specific tech that I use and kind of go through why I do it and why and how it's been super successful to me. So, like she said, I have my 296th property under contract in my farm right now. So, it's pretty awesome. I'm going to share my screen. I've never shared my screen on a PowerPoint before, so hopefully this works. Can you all see that? Hello.
No, we can't see it.
All right.
I don't. I can make you a host. I just want to make sure I can still let people in and that you won't be distracted.
Yeah. Yeah, can you do that real quick? Sorry, I had it all up here and then when I just went to share screen, it disappeared. So give me 1 second, y'all.
Okay, see if that works.
Share screen. Here we go. It is not sharing. 1 second. All right, now can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
Yes, you can see it?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. So just to go over kind of what farming is, I'm sure you guys all know about it, but this is uh, why I do farming. It's a lead generator tool to kind of become the go-to agent. I keep getting these Zoom pop-ups telling me that there's a problem. Are we still good?
Yeah,
Still
I
good.
can still see it. And just let me know if you're seeing names pop up that you're having to let in the room. I want to try to take that off your plate. Oops.
Are
Looks
we
like she
back?
got bumped off. Oh no, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, I just got like 5 messages and then it booted me off. So let's try this one more time. All right. Um, and then I'll just do it without the thing. Hopefully you guys can see that. Anyways, it just allows you to have a more specific message and deliver value to people. So when I started in my farm, I did a couple different things. Like I said, I had newborn twins at home. I started a Moms of Multiples group. This was back in 2007. This was I was barely even on Facebook at this point. I just created like a pretty basic website and invited all the moms of multiples to get together. We had a couple of meetups. Um, and that kind of led to other marketing opportunities. I think that a question that I get a lot from people is how to choose your farm. I didn't really choose my farm. It kind of chose me. Farming needs to be a long-term solution. So authenticity is really the key. There are other people that I know that teach farming that's more of like a common interest farming. And that would be like how I started with the Moms of Multiples, but that really was Moms of Multiples within my farm and kind of led to more of the geographic farming. But I don't recommend doing it how a lot of the other people, they'll say, hey, just go in and check your stats and pick a neighborhood that turns over a lot and then just pick that neighborhood. I think that you can get a little bit of success with that, but I don't think you're going to have any kind of long-term traction unless it's somewhere that you live or like it says here, somewhere that you love, potentially someplace that you're trying to get to move to because you're going to be wanting to meet a ton of people in that neighborhood and do this for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, it needs to be someplace that's, geographically close to you, someplace that you're interested in, someplace that you can get plugged into quickly. And like it says here, if you don't live there, you're going to need to research ways to get involved in that area. And then you want to look at sales data and see if there's enough turnover in this neighborhood to make sense for me to farm it. Like I said, my farm has 4,500 houses in here. I don't necessarily recommend choosing a farm that large. There are some people within Steiner Ranch that farm specific sections that they live in, and that's probably more manageable. I just kind of fell into a 4,500 person farm and went with it. But like I said, it's important to be authentic. I've tried a bunch of different ways to meet people within my farm. I started taking tennis lessons because there's a big tennis group within Steiner Ranch. I'm terrible at tennis. I don't like it. I have 2 left feet. So that was me being inauthentic. It didn't work. So I think if you get nothing out of this today, it is definitely to pick a farm that you authentically love and that you are authentic with. I'm going to get into some of my more specific marketing strategy and some things that I did and some things that you can do. I think it's super important to make a plan in the beginning of what your farm is. It doesn't mean that that plan cannot change as you move through it. The first thing that you're going to need to do is set a budget for that farm. Farming isn't the only type of marketing I do. It is the main crux of what I do at this point, because I have since started a team and really I only work my farm and my past clients and my sphere of influence within my farm and then give everything else to my team. But if you're just starting out with a farm, you're going to want to create a budget. That's super important because you're going to want to allocate that in all kinds of different ways throughout your farm. I think it's really important to create a brand for your farm. I go by Steiner Ranch Info. I fell into that. I had a guy about 14 years ago call me and say, hey, my family's moving to Cupertino. I got a job with Apple. I started this blog in Steiner Ranch in 2003 or 2005. It's called Steiner Ranch Info. Whoever sells my house, I'm going to give this blog to and this brand. And what was funny to me is that none of the other realtors were interested in it. And I was. I sold his house. I took over that brand. So I became Steiner Ranch Info. I told this story when I taught this class last week, but it was kind of interesting. I was doing an open house within my farm a couple months ago. And I had someone that came in and I was already in a conversation with him. And I had this other woman come in and she was kind of interrupting and stuff like that. And she said something about how she had an agent. And I was like, oh, who's your agent? And I was like, oh, I'm not familiar with that agent, but come in and look around. And she said, yeah, I don't need an agent in Steiner Ranch. I get all of my information from Steiner Ranch Info. And I said, I'm Steiner Ranch Info. And that was pretty cool to me because she knew my brand. Didn't necessarily know that it was me, but I ended up selling her a house because she knew that brand and it was somebody that she trusted. And then she did eventually realize that she would be better off working with the actual Steiner Ranch Info than just, getting the information off my blog. But anyways, the third B in that would be to build and make sure that you're always building on that plan. As you start selling stuff within your farm, you're going to need to raise that budget and start adding in new areas of awareness within that farm. So you need to be able to just plan on building and never stop building that awareness. I think my screen share just...
Sorry, Lisa. Just trying to let people in the room. I'll give it back to you.
Okay. I'm still... All right.
See if that works. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no problem. I think we're back. All right. Hopefully y'all can see. Oh, no, now it went back to the beginning. Okay, so here's where I've listed a lot of the things that I did and still do a lot of these within my farm. They're kind of listed from free to expensive, so that if you're getting started with the farm, I would definitely recommend starting with a Google business page, a social media page. At this point, I get a lot of business off my Google business page. I could teach a whole other class on how to optimize that Google business page. it's relatively free. From there, you can also do Google local service ads, which again is a gold mine for free leads when you're doing things geographically. Social media page. I have a Facebook page for my brand that has over 4,000 followers on there. I have several thousand on Instagram. YouTube is, I don't have that many on YouTube. That's my plan to kind of build that out this year. From there, I kind of went to an email newsletter, which I now have 4,000 people that get that email newsletter. I do it monthly. I had done door knocking in my previous farm. It's not okay in the farm that I'm in right now, but circle prospecting, totally do circle prospecting and recommend it. That's something that's pretty affordable. You can get a Red X account or whatever. That's something that if you don't already have business in your farm, you can start building up your database that way by just calling around other listings and saying, hey, I saw this listing on your street at XYZ. Just wanted to see if I could help you in any way, stuff like that. And that's how you're going to build up that database when you are new to an area or new prospecting it or don't live there. Community paper ads. I'm not someone that is huge into print right now, but one of the things I did do about 12 years ago is I was offered the back page of the community magazine that went out every month. I wouldn't have done it if it was just in the magazine. I don't think anybody reads those, but I have not even been on that back page in 2 years. And I got a $2.3 million listing last year in my farm. And I said, hey, how did you get my name? And they said, oh, you were just on the back of that newsletter for so many years. We remembered you and called you. So again, with that, I would make sure that it's something very community specific. I don't think there's a lot of value in most of the print advertising that's going out there. Neighborhood event sponsorship, those are awesome. I've never done one that I planned myself, but I am the go-to that pretty much everybody in the neighborhood calls when they want something sponsored, whether it's the neighborhood race or, you know, a neighborhood CPR event. I'm sponsoring something that's coming up for that. Those can be very low cost to being very high cost to being the, you know, main sponsor of an event. In fact, I have a $2.1 million listing coming out that they called me a couple of weeks ago and basically said, if you'll sponsor the high school baseball team, which their kids were on, we'll give you this listing. That was a no-brainer. It was a $1,500 sponsorship to get a $2.1 million listing. I also have a custom website. I had it up on the screen on an earlier slide, but it's steinerranchinfo.com if you want to check it out. This is, I started out with the blog that I inherited from that guy that I mentioned before about 12 years ago, and I've redone this site 3 different times. And it's pretty built out at this point with all the knowledge that I've been dumping into it for 15 years. My neighborhood has over 40 specific subdivisions in it. I break down every single neighborhood in there. I've had drone photography done of every neighborhood. I break down in every one of those sections what the year, when those houses were built, which streets have the views, which HOA it belongs to, which elementary school it goes to. That's all in there. So one of the things that I do on my social media, it just gives me content for that. I'll feature a different section in there, but it also has become a great tool for people that want to get on there and research the neighborhood themselves. There's just a lot of information on there. If I had one thing that I've done out of anything, if I could only do one thing, it would be that website. So highly recommend doing that if you have the means to do it. It's not cheap. You can start out with a cheap one-page website. This website that I have now cost me about $10,000. So I definitely worked up to that. Client events, this is where you would start getting into doing events within your farm for the clients you've already built out.
It costs $10,000 to make, you might be bringing in $50,000.
Mailers. Again, I don't do a ton of print, but I do believe in doing targeted stuff like just listed and just sold. If you're going to do those, make sure that you're targeted with a call to action on there. Everything that I send out has a QR code on it that I can track which address it went to that went back to my website. So that's just one of the ways that I'm tracking stuff within the neighborhood. And then more expensive stuff is, oops, what are we doing here? wrapped vehicles, larger ads. I've never done a billboard. I've seen people do billboards, and the Zillow zip code. I recently just was offered the Zillow zip code for my farm, and that was kind of a no-brainer for me because I'm already listed on Zillow as the person who has the most reviews in that area. So I'm able to close a large majority of the Zillow leads that come in through there. So it's definitely not cheap though. Um, so one of the things that I'm known for and that is important to me in my farm is to constantly be providing value and marketing myself as, the only person that can provide that value. So there's a lot of agents that come into my farm and they'll, sell stuff in there, but they don't have the value proposition that I have. And this is what I've found that my farm values the most. People in my neighborhood are very techy. A large chunk of the people that live in my neighborhood work for Dell, Samsung. There's a lot of engineers, a lot of very data driven type people that live in my neighborhood. This is why I listed on here what my farm values, because, if you're farming actual farms and ranches or other neighborhoods like that, this might be different. And this is where this is going to take some, trial and error, getting to know the people in your farm. But people in my neighborhood love stats. If you go on my website, I have a whole other domain name that is Steiner Ranch Market Info that links to a page on my website where I track specific stats. Coming soon, I started a private Facebook page for realtors for my neighborhood. There's about 20 agents that I would consider to be agents who live within my farm and work a lot within my farm. The vast majority of us work together, we're friendly. And I saw a lot of them posting on the neighborhood pages a couple years ago. Hey, does anybody know about this coming up? Or, and a lot of us started just communicating on that page. And I got with them and was like, hey, I think we should take this off being client facing to all these people that are in here. I'll just admit this person. Client facing, because I said, you're going to see all these people in the community that are just like, what are these agents doing? We could do this ourselves. We don't need them to do this for us. So I started a Steiner Ranch private page for realtors to communicate our off-market listings. And we also communicate stuff on there like, hey, I just was in a multiple offer situation on X property. I think it went this high over because I did. Are we back again?
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, I was talking about the private page that I started in Steiner Ranch. So that just goes back to off-market listings. Insider information. People in my farm always want insider information. When the market was insane, from 20 to 2022, I started keeping a spreadsheet of all the off-market sales that I knew about and what they went for. And it got to the point where agents from all over were calling me and saying, hey, I hear you have this spreadsheet. And I was happy to share it with agents that would help, but it was pretty awesome for me to be able to tell people when they would come into my open houses within my farm, like, hey, did you know this happened? Or did you know this is under contract? Or did you know this is coming soon? They're like, no, I didn't know that. I've never heard that. I'm just working with Zillow. And I picked up so many clients just by having that and being willing to share that information with people. And the amount of business I got not only during that time, but even just since then, because it just got so well known that I had all the insider information, and that's how I was able to do that. So also important in my farm, heavily people value community involvement. So I just always make sure that when I do a newsletter, that it's always got the stats coming soon, insider information, and then something about the community. So this last month, we the band for our high school here is huge. Everybody loves the band. We're #1 in states. They're having their big mulch fundraiser. So of course I linked something to the mulch fundraiser. People love that. So this is kind of what I focus on making sure people understand the value that I bring. And this is what I am always touching on when I meet people within my farm. So specifically, how do I do stats? I have, if you go onto my Steiner Ranch market info page on my website, we've got, you'll see stuff like this. There's two different ways that I do this. If you have a WordPress website, you can get a plugin for your site that I believe is $100 a year. It's called Visualizer. And this is what those stats look like. And I can't do it here on the PowerPoint, but it's pretty cool. When someone's on my website, they can hover over the bars in that bar graph and see what those numbers are. It's real easy for them to see these trends. And I've had some people say like, oh, I can't believe you just published that information. You'd be surprised at how many people don't even understand how to interpret this information. So every month when I send out my monthly newsletter, I write my own analysis of what this stuff means in there. This just talks about, this is Visualizer, just so you can take a picture of that or whatever if you want to see how that works. It's also really easy, and I don't know why this is blurry right here, but it's really easy to do this stuff in Excel. You just go in and plug in your data into a spreadsheet, and then you can highlight it all and then type in at the top chart, and it will make charts for you. And then you can just click and make it a JPEG. So if you're not at the stage yet where you have a website or want to create a website, you can do it here and then just share that stuff to your Facebook page very easily. That people love that. These are the stats that I track monthly. And so I'll go through these. Obviously, sale price to original list price, sale price to current list price. This is probably the stat that people interact with me the most on when I publish this stuff monthly. This is the stat that I talk about constantly in open houses. This is the stat that I talk about constantly in listing appointments. One thing I do also before I have a listing appointment is I always send people over a link to my stats page and my most recent analysis. I don't have to have a lot of tricky conversations on my listing appointments when I send this stuff over, because they've already read my analysis and they're kind of understanding what I'm going to be talking about when I get there. I think it's important to always differentiate between the sale price and original list price and current list price in your analysis, because this is a conversation you're going to get with price reductions and pricing and stuff like that. So I had someone come into my open house recently in my farm and say, oh, I hear the market's crashing in there. Everything's going, 20% under list price. And this is where I can say, not really. You've got a lot of stuff that was overpriced. But the stuff that when it got to the right list price, we were going at 99% of what it was currently listed at. So no, I'm not going to write a lowball offer for you. I track the cash buyers in my neighborhood specifically. This was a great indicator during the busiest time of the market, investors that were coming in, people that were cashing out. And now I find that people have conversations about this metric and they ask me like, why are we still seeing so many cash buyers and what does it mean? And so it's just kind of a good conversation starter. People like to see that stat. New listings, I always track the number of new listings that came out that month. And this is great for me to be able to say, when is a good time to list? When is a good time to buy? People constantly tell me, even people who I see that read my stats over and over again, I want to list spring break. I want to list spring break. And if you look at the data, the best time to list your house in my farm is between January before spring break, before the inventory builds. It's one of the worst times to buy. So that's a good thing. Months of inventory is, I think, the best metric to track. You got to explain to people what that means. Every single time I publish that, I have to explain to people what it means, but it's basically, the absorption rate of the inventory. And then I specifically track the rental stats also because I don't want to do property management. Every once in a while, I will lease stuff within my farm. I track that stuff so that I can get these people engaged and then list their rental property when they're ready to sell it. But I get a lot of hits on my website from property owners wanting to know when the best time to end their leases and stuff like that. And so these metrics on the screen here help with that and help me to keep engaged with those people that are non-owner occupied within my farm. So these are the stats that I track annually. I do an annual recap of my farm where I send it out at the end of the year and just kind of explain everything that happened that year, what my predictions are for the next year. I always link it back to my last year's predictions just to kind of show like, hey, I was right about this. This is what we saw and why. These are also great stats that I publish on my social media. Like I published when I did my year-end recap for 2022, I realized that the prices in my farm from 2019, when I did my analysis to 2022, went up 94%. It's insane. But you can see here, this is the stuff that I track annually. People love this stuff. This is my year-end review chart that I put out. Y'all can take a picture of this. This started out being something that was published by the title company, and I wanted to make it my own. So I basically just spent an hour back in 2019 and started my own chart of this on Excel. And then every year I just plug in the new numbers, figure out the percentages and stuff like that. And people love this when I publish it. These are some pie charts, again, also done on Excel that people love. I put these in my newsletter that gets sent out. I mean, this one fascinates me. You can see, the percentage of properties in 2018 in my farm that were under 500,000 was almost half of them, and then almost none in 2022. So technology, I would go ahead and take a picture of this. I use a ton of technology to keep track of what's going on in my farm. You absolutely have to have a smart website. If you're already with EXP, you've got a KB Core website. I am always shocked at the number of posts that I see other realtors putting on Facebook or whatever that is just a link to the MLS link, or even stupider, in my opinion, the link to their listing on Zillow or realtor.com. You have to have a smart website that's tracking what these people are looking at. So number one, have that. Thanks.io. This is something that every time I talk about this, people are like, that is so creepy, but that is so amazing. Thanks.io is a free website where you're going to put this little pixel in your website, and you can go to thanks.io and see everybody who hits their website. So if you go onto a website and something pops up in the corner that says, do you want to allow the website to see where you are or whatever? That's what that is. It's reporting back, and I can tell you who hits my website every single month. It's free. The reason it's free is because their service is so that you can send these people postcards, which is something that is really cool. If you have a smaller farm, I would recommend doing it. So if somebody hits your website, you can just send them out a mailer piece, and it's automatic through Thanks.io, but I just use Thanks.io to watch the traffic on my website. Retargeting. If you are not retargeting to people that have hit your website, you're just missing a massive opportunity. I think it's very much underused in the real estate landscape. This is something that is not that hard to do. You can do it through your Google account, or you can pay somebody to do it. But a lot of the stuff that I do through my social media or through my mailers that go out is I'm just always trying to get people to hit my Steiner Ranch Info website for whatever reason it is. So for example, when I said that on my last mailer, I did a link to the mulch fundraiser for the high school. I didn't just link the website to the high school thing. I linked it to my website, which had a little blurb about the mulch thing that then had a link on there. And so the reason I do that is because once they hit my website, I can retarget them with ads for the next year or to 18 months of my listings or whatever. If you're going to do retargeting, you can't just do retargeting. You need to be able to talk about it in your listing appointment. So when I go in listing appointments in my farm, I tell them, hey, I've got the Steiner Ranch Info brand. And one of the things that I can do with this brand is get, 5 to 20,000 people within our neighborhood every year to click on my website, which allows me to serve them up retargeting ads. And so they'll see your listing first when they go on whatever website they're on. They're going to get retargeted with your listing. People love that. Geotag photos. This is the website that I use. I geotag every photo that I use everywhere. If you look up geotagging for SEO, there are conflicting opinions on that, but I see a lot of success with geotagging my photos. So when you geotag your photos, it's going to add the address of something, whatever you choose, into that photo. I geotag every photo with my office address, which is the same address that my website, my Google business, my Google LSA ads are all tied to that same address. And so supposedly, and I believe it to be true, when the websites are, or when the Google bots or whatever are searching through your website and they're reading this and you have all these photos on your websites that are geotagged, it does help. It definitely does help on the Google business side of it. And when you're geotagging those photos, you can also add metadata into those photos with information about your farm. Like all of my photos all have Steiner Ranch info, Steiner Ranch real estate, all of that stuff put into the metadata of the photo. One thing that is super simple, but I see not a lot of people do it, is always to tag your location in social media. So anytime I'm posting anything on social media, whether it be my Steiner Ranch info, Facebook, Instagram, anything like that, I am always tagging Steiner Ranch in that. SEMrush is a good website that I use. There's a lot of websites, but you're going to want to use a service of some sort to research blog topics to have on your website. Basically, you're going to go in and just Google your farm and see what questions people are asking about that farm, and then write blog posts about that, have it in your website if you have one. And then jasper.ai is a website that I use to help write those blog posts. Anyways, that's kind of the secret sauce of all the technology that I use to monitor my farm. All right. I'm sure you guys have all heard this saying before. I don't know who said it. Someone very smart said this: your network is your net worth. So I have been in real estate for 23 years. I've been working my farm, as I told you, for 17 years. And it's embarrassing for me to admit this, that I really did not work a database until just a couple of years ago, which is insane. You have got to put an emphasis on building out the database of your farm. It is one of the things that you will make a ton of money from, is just having that very simple database. This is my number one priority. Every single person that I meet goes into that database if they come into my open house. When I finally got serious about fleshing out my database, I went through every single email that I had ever gotten since my kids were in school, every single kindergarten party list, every single neighborhood sports team, took every email out of there, cross-referenced it with the tax records, got their, did whatever I had to do to buy data or whatever to fill in the information in this database. It was a massive job. It'll be much easier if, when you start your farm, you just make this a priority and put everybody in there and put all of their information in as you go. If you want, you can buy a list. That's definitely an option. Like I said, fill in all info as you go. If you have someone in there with their name and their email address, and then you later learn something else about them in there, always add that in there. Using tags is huge for me within my farm. Like I said, my farm has 4,500 houses in it. There are a lot of different sections where we see the same floor plans over and over and over again. I always tag people if I know their house is a one-story, if I know that their house has a view, if I know their house is a specific floor plan. Because if I meet a buyer and they're in my open house and they say, well, we don't really like this house, we're looking for more of a, I don't know, two-story family room. At this point, I already know all the plans that have that two-story family room. I'm going to go to my database and search by who has a Sorrento plan, who has a whatever plan, pull those people up, email them, hey, I just met someone in my open house. They're looking for this floor plan by chance. Are you guys considering selling? Or do you know any of your neighbors in your neighborhood that has X floor plan? And so I've been able to match a lot of buyers and sellers by just having those details in there. And then, even if I didn't match them, it's a great reason to be just calling people in my farm. Another thing that I do in my post-closing action plan, whenever I close anything, is to get the birthdays of the people and just fill that information into the farm as well, because it's just another, or into the database, it's just another reason to reach out to people in the farm and wish them happy birthday, happy anniversary, stuff like that. Again, I don't know why this is blurry, but my newsletter that goes out monthly to my farm is not super jazzy. This is a constant contact newsletter. This is what it looks like. It's got my logo up at the top. Again, I don't know why it's blurry, but you see I lead with the stats. I always put a blurb underneath it, like list price to sale price ratio up 5% this month. Click here for more information. That second section is just a link to my 4 upcoming listings in Steiner Ranch. You can see the second one is Mulch Madness. That's the one I talked about before. And then everything else in there are static links that are just always in there. So it doesn't take me that long to do this newsletter every month. This newsletter goes out to about 4,000 people every month, and I get a pretty high click-through rate, open rate. And then the cool thing about using Constant Contact is I can also go on the back end and see who's reading my market update, of these people. And I'll see the same people reading it every month. And I'm like, okay, those people are probably going to make a move. Obviously I should reach out to them, but also I've got it in the back of my head. If I meet, just as I'm meeting people throughout the neighborhood, just kind of knowing what might be coming on or who's thinking about making a move. Down here, you probably can't see them because they're kind of blurry. I also have links to all my socials. I have a link to a page on my website that shows the 295 listings that I sold in my house or in my farm. It's interesting to me that people click on that all the time. So I'm just constantly reinforcing to people over and over and over again. Even if you look on the top of my Instagram page for Steiner Ranch info, I update it every time I have a closing. It says 295 homes sold in Steiner Ranch. I mean, so I'm just constantly marketing that. I also put this newsletter on my social media. It also gets retargeted out to people. So there's a lot of different stuff that you can do with that newsletter. And then these are some things that I think that you should never, 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 ever do in your farm. And this is, these are my top 3. And this is something, the first one is super important in my farm right now. Like our HOA is a disaster right now. We're trying to remove some people from the board. They spent way too much money on a dog park. They spent $500,000, only got 1 bid. So it's a pretty big deal. One of my competitors in my farm, who I actually am good friends with and very much respect, he is constantly on his same channel that he's publishing his listings in Steiner Ranch. He's also publishing these negative videos about what's going on with the HOA. And from one perspective, I can see where it's probably getting him a lot of clicks and a lot of traffic. But I have also had people specifically call me and want to list with me because they're like, why on earth would I want my property listed with this guy who's also out there telling people our HOA sucks? So it is costing him business, giving me business. You'll never see me post anything anywhere negatively about the neighborhood or anything going on with it. Another thing that I see people do, which I just think is, it's really not even ethical, but there's someone in my farm who is constantly out there jumping on whatever the latest news cycle is saying about real estate. And he'll go on his platform and make these videos about, oh, the market is crashing. It is amazing for buyers. We're getting buyers awesome deals. We just got this buyer, 20% off on this house, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess who's not listing their house with them? Because who wants to have someone listing their house who is telling buyers to come in and write lowball offers? So I always make sure that when I'm publishing my stats, I take kind of a neutral reporting stance on all of it. So that way I'm not, turning off any potential sellers. I'm not turning off any potential buyers. I'm really just reporting what things are. And then privately within my clients, I'll have conversations about, how we can use this data to help us. But I do not ever take a very strong stance one way or another on the market in any kind of large arena, such as my newsletter, videos, anything like that. The third thing on here is you can never get too comfortable in your farm. And that's important because I have seen people come and go in my farm over the past, 15, 16 years. They come in and they have a good year and they're, sending out newsletters and they're doing stuff and they're getting a little bit of traction. And then either they get busy or they think it'll just last forever. And then next thing you know, it's like, whatever happened to that guy? They got comfortable. They stopped, doing the ongoing marketing, stopped doing the newsletter, stopped doing all that stuff. And they're no longer in the farm anymore, or their market share went way down. The fourth thing that I would say on here that I should add to this is to not alienate other agents within your farm. It's important to have good relationships with all of the agents in your farm. In my farm, like I said, there's about 20 people who live in the neighborhood and work a lot in the neighborhood. The vast majority of us are friends. Certainly, we do deals together all the time. And we share information with each other as we can. And it's just, you just don't want to make enemies of people within your farm. So that's really kind of the end of the presentation that I have. I don't know what our time looks like, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
I do have a question. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh, is that you, Lisa? Yes.
Yes.
I recognize, but I don't see you.
Sorry, I have my cameras off. But I have, and this is a situation that I had actually this week, so it's something fresh. So right now, what is your advice to a seller that is buying at the same time? Because right now, for example, here in Florida, we have a lot of sellers giving concessions to the buyers, like or buying down the rates for them because the houses are staying in the market for 6 months and they're getting desperate. So in case it's a seller that is going to buy, what is your advice in that case? Because you is a seller but at the same time is a buyer. Make sense? It's more about that what you were saying about conflicting
Well, I really was talking about more of like a public stance for that. I think you can give the advice that you're giving to them. I mean, that's kind of an easy one. It's like, hey, look, Mr. Seller, this is what we're seeing available to us over here on the buy side, but also know that this is probably what it's going to take to get your house sold over here. So I think it is the same advice for both people. I just kind of was meaning from like, I'm not going to go live on my Facebook and be like, oh, it's a buyer free for all, it's,
right.
the market is crashing and everyone come and buy from me and I'm going to get you these amazing deals. Well, yeah, you're going to get a bunch of buyers, but your sellers are all going to call me because they're not going to want to be associated with you putting that out there. But I think in your instance, you always just give the correct advice to both people. And that's where I was saying that those conversations where you're getting more into specifics, I think are best had in private.
It was actually a full conversation, not nothing public or anything like that, but it was a little bit. I actually during the conversation I was like, okay, how can I say this? Because it's like, okay, buyers have a lot of advantage right now. You can negotiate for them and all of that. But at the same time, for sellers, I mean, the only strategy that comes to my mind right now for sellers is to price it lower than the market value so they can, be ahead of the market. So, it's all new for me. So just wanted to ask that question.
No, it's a great question. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have one. You mentioned also, hi.
Hi.
This was super entertaining and helpful. I took so many notes. But going back to what you mentioned about Google Ads, and then you mentioned something that said Google Land Services. I missed what came after that. Can you expand on that for me, please?
Yeah, I think you're sorry. The heat is on and I'm roasting. I just got it. Google LSA, Google Local Service Ads. This is something that I just learned about a year ago. And it's insane. Like I was able to go and set up local service ads. It took a couple days because the difference is with your local service ads is that you're verified by Google. So you have your Google business page. It's not anything that's verified. So for me, I had to go through like a couple day process where I had to send in my E&O insurance. I had to send in proof of my license and a couple other things to verify that I was like a business in good standing. And then you can become one of these Google local service providers that if you go and Google whatever your town is, Austin real estate, you'll see the ads at the top. It's crazy cheap because I don't think a lot of people know about it. And that also is one of those things where when you have something that's very targeted to your address that's in your farm, that's tied to your website, that's tied to your Google business page and tied to your Google LSA, all the same address, it helps you with those searches. And again, I could do a whole nother class on those LSA ads, but I mean, I have gotten 2 listings this year off those ads. And I want to say it was a very low cost per lead, maybe $30, where people literally just called and said, I need someone to come over and list my house. So that is one of those things where geotagging your photos to your farm and to your same address that you're using in your Google address and all of that other stuff helps you rank within those. And I think Google local service ads is just a very unknown avenue out there, but it is something that is perfect for someone who farms because it's specific to that address within your farm and within your targeting.
Are you using your home address on those listings?
I am. I don't know. I probably shouldn't. But yeah, my address is smack dab in the middle of my farm, so I do use it. No one's knocked on my door yet, so I do use it. If I had an office within my farm, I would use that, but for sure I do not use the main EXP address because there's just too many people using that address. So
yeah,
it needs, if it's geographically in your farm and you're tagging everything with that, it's gonna just Google learns your association with that location. And as people are searching for stuff within that location, it does help you.
okay.
Anybody else?
So would you consider doing a Google class too?
Maybe, but I think there's people better than me out there who are doing it. So I don't think I possibly is my answer. I don't know if I feel like I'm just kind of scratching the surface of it. It's something that I learned through a previous coaching service that I was using before like I became a success coach, and someone just casually mentioned it to me and I went in and looked into it and was just shocked at how little known and little used it is. It's probably one of those things that maybe 3 years from now, everyone's going to be doing it and it's not going to be as good. But I mean, I can track 25,000 in GCI this year just from about $60 in ads on that service. And I just feel like it's something that is more valuable to people that are farming just because of the geographical, I mean, it's local service ad. So it ties in really well with that type of marketing.
I'm really curious if you are solely managing your website and if you've switched website hosting over the past few years that you've really honed in on that.
That's a great question. And I'll tell you that I hate the company that's managing my website right now. And I hated the company before it. I'm starting to think there's just nobody out there that does a good job with websites. I will tell you that the current iteration of my farm website, Steiner Ranch Info, is hosted by Agent Image. And I dislike them very much for everything else that their website does and doesn't do. And so I have a whole second website that I use for lead gen and running my team and transaction management. And I'm going to let this person in. If I did it again, I would have probably done it differently to not have the 2 separate websites. I do manage it myself, and that's why I can say that I have slacked off recently with blogging and stuff like that because of that. So I love the Steiner Ranch Info website. It does the job for the branding and everything else that I do with it. I mean, I'll never not have it. And it took a long time to build it out. Like I said, that's 15 years of me dumping my brain and dumping in information into that site. But is it optimized? For me, definitely not.
So how frequently are you getting in and looking at those statistics? Because you're showing like, clicks and, hits during the month. Are you doing it weekly or daily?
I mean,
how frequently?
I publish that stuff monthly, but I'm looking at that stuff every single day. I'm just a stats nerd. I'm a very high D. I love numbers. Like I mean, I skipped 2 grades in school because I could do calculus in my head. So I don't expect everybody to be that into these numbers, but it's like every single day. I had someone the other day that called me and they're like, oh yeah, the market is crashing in Steiner, blah, blah, blah. And so I real quickly went in and looked at just the 4 closings we had that day and was able to say, we had 4 listings that closed today in Steiner Ranch that closed at 99% average list price to sale price ratio for that. So I think if you're going to become the expert, you have to just constantly be absorbing that information. But I publish it monthly. I analyze it in my newsletter monthly. But it is something that I use constantly. So, I mean, I'm checking the hot sheet in Steiner Ranch every 5 seconds. If I'm sitting at my desk and not doing something, I'm looking at that and I'm just visually crunching those numbers. That is one thing I will never, ever, ever have my assistant do. I'm never going to have someone run those stats because running the stats also puts them into my brain. And you want to be able to just throw that information out there at any given time. So, Brittany. Did you have a question? Nope. Okay. Anybody else?
What CRM do you use?
I use Brivity. I used KV Core for a long time. And because I wanted the transaction management piece on the other side, I use Brivity.
Thank you.
But again, I think anybody will tell you the CRM that you should use is the CRM that you should use. I mean, like I said, I didn't even use a CRM for like the first 20 years in real estate, which is absurd to me, the amount of business that I've been able to do, doing 20 to $30 million a year without even a database, just kind of flying by the seat of my pants is ridiculous. I've had a bunch, I've had Realty Juggler, I've had Top Producer, I've had everything under the sun. I've used spreadsheets. So I don't really think it matters. I mean, I think there's some that have better capabilities. I think KV Core is pretty awesome for the way you can run ads and do leads and do all that stuff and have it go directly into your CRM. I would recommend that one.
Sorry, do you think there's a farm that's too big to manage, or what's your thought on?
Like I said, I wouldn't recommend doing 4,500 houses like I do. I kind of just fell into that. It's a very expensive farm to farm. Luckily, our price points are like, if you were listening, they went up 94% in the past 3 years. So, my average sale in the last year was $1 million in here. So is there one that's too large? I mean, I wouldn't do a whole city, but you want to have some sort of geographical boundary to it, because that also is going to help you with your branding towards that neighborhood. And just, yeah, there is something that's too large. I think it's just going to be what makes sense to the geographical boundaries of the area that you can authentically talk about and live in or be in. So I think it's a different answer for every area, but just it should be obvious what makes sense for the area that you're in.
When you first started your website for your farm, what do you think was like the key information to have in there, and how did you market your website initially? Like for somebody that's trying to start a new farm and build or something like that.
For me, I took it over from that guy who was blogging. And it's interesting to me because every once in a while when I go in and I'm like obsessively looking at the hits on my website, I will see that someone hit like something that he blogged about in 2005. And I was like, where did that come from? But that is a testament to how SEO works. And so having consistent blog content in there is I think the key to starting to get traffic and just building your authority. I think blogging is amazing for doing that. And like I said, you can, if you're not a great writer, I'm one of those people who is sometimes a great writer when I'm inspired, but if I'm forced to have to write something, I'm not that great. And so that's where I have my assistant use Jasper AI. But the blogging is great because you can cross promote that up on social media. Like you can tweet out something, you can put it on Instagram. Almost anytime I post a picture on Instagram in my farm Instagram, it links back to a blog post, which then maybe also has links to properties within that area. So blogging, I guess that would be my number one. And then just cross promoting that on social media to build traffic. And then from there, going into a newsletter.
How many times a week are you blogging?
How now? Not very many. Not, and I used to blog maybe 3 to 5 times a week, but right now I'm not doing it as much as I should for sure because I'm super busy, but not as much. I mean, I think that's always the answer. You could be blogging, 10 times a week and doing it not as much. But I do know a lot of people who are using Fiverr to get people to write blog posts. And that's something that I was doing for a while. And then my Fiverr guy kind of quit and I dropped the ball on that. But I need to get back into getting that stuff done.
And where do you get all your data
So you
from?
do not have
that
like
you're
an
posting?
assistant help.
I do have Nicole, I think that was you. I do have an assistant that helps with the blogging. We just haven't been super consistent with it lately because we need to get back on a schedule. Once the Fiverr guy quit, which was a couple months ago, that's on my list of things to get back going into the scheduling. I think someone just asked another question about where I get all the data. Who was that?
Yes, that was me.
So which data are you referring to? Like the database stuff or the stats or?
Like all your stats. I mean, I'm brand new, so I don't really know what I should be, putting out there. Where are you getting all your stats from?
I'm running them myself. I mean, your MLS will run them. I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know if you're in Austin, but Abor, if you go in, so I go into my farm and I'll type in the list date. Like if I'm doing the month, I'll do January 1, 2023 to January 31st, 2023. Click on the actives, and then I can just see that's the number of new listings. But then if you want to go into the solds, you can click on them all, and then on the bottom of the screen it'll say stats, and then it will just tabulate it all in there. And then I just take that number and go and throw it into my website, into either the visualizer or into the chart I created on Excel. But so that's actually for a long time I was using the title company stats, and the title company that I was getting the stats from, they put out a password every month. And then I stopped using them because that's a whole nother story. They were involved in some shady stuff. And I stopped using them for a while I was waiting to see what was fleshing out of this investigation that was going on. And they stopped giving me the password. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have been giving y'all my business exclusively for 15 years and you're going to stop giving me this password. And so it was kind of funny. I taught this class last week at Abor, and one of the agents in my farm came to watch it. And for like 6 months, I was just asking her, hey, Erin, can you send me the password? Can you send me the independence password? And finally I got doing that. And that's when I was like, this is so dumb. Like, why am I relying on somebody else to get these stats? I started running them myself. It doesn't take that much time. And it is so much better because the act of running them puts the information into your head so that you're learning them. But you could do all the stats that I'm doing in 20 minutes and just put it into if you don't have a website, just put it into your Excel spreadsheet. I would highly recommend doing it yourself. Any more questions? Keith Dublé, do you have any questions?
How did you become so freaking amazing? And what is your name?
And did you say, and what is your name? That's a private,
Yes.
that's a private joke. I always forget Keith's name. How did I become so amazing? I don't know. I guess I was just born that way. No, honestly, a lot of the stuff that I did was through trial and error. And I wasted a lot of money over the years. I mean, got conned into a lot of stupid print, stupid ads, just SEO stuff, services I didn't need. I mean, I would be afraid to count up the amount of money I've spent over the last 15 years doing stuff that didn't work. So I just gave you guys all the stuff that did work. So hopefully I saved y'all a lot of money. And
So question about the website though. So if you're wanting to build a website and obviously you're stacking it as you can with more and more technology and you put more and more money into it, what is a good foundation to start with regarding like what are the most important things that you're seeing like people interact with tools and resources on your website? A lot of us want to build this multi-million-dollar website and aren't confident until it looks like some really successful realtors like website. But if you're just going to put something out there, what would you say are the most important tools to start with?
the blogging and the stats, that's what I get the most traffic from. When I go through and I look at like my constant contact email, so I've only been doing the constant contact email for like 3 years when I started finally getting serious about working my database. And so when you do that, I have probably 20 different things you can click on that newsletter that will take you to whatever. And so that's what's kind of cool. In fact, that I send that out, she's always like, oh my God, stop looking at the clicks, because I want to go in there and I'm like, what are people clicking on? And I would say they're clicking on my market update. I mean, everyone's reading that. Everyone's reading my upcoming listings. So even if you don't have any upcoming listings, this is where I say networking with other agents in your farm. Like nobody in my farm says no to me when I'm like, hey, would you mind if I put your coming soon listing and credit you on my newsletter that's going out to 4,000 people? They're like, hell yeah, of course I want you to do that. Or would you mind if I put that on my website and just put it under my upcoming listings so that people know? They're more than happy to do that. And so, yeah, upcoming listings, stats, and blogs are the most. I actually do get an insane amount of clicks on that one link that I have that says, see the 295 listings I've sold in Steiner Ranch. Like, I don't know, maybe people don't believe it or they're, I don't know, just verifying, but a lot of people look at that for me. Silas, I think you just texted me. Are you even on here anymore, Silas? Okay, I think you got off. He was just talking about, he asked me a question about KV Core and the database. I think there's, again, I think KV Core is an awesome site for doing the retargeting that I was talking about. And you could build out your entire website on to any site like KV Core, Brivity, Chime, stuff like that. One thing that I didn't mention is that I own about 40 domain names that have my website or my farm in them. Like I own steinerranchinfo.com. Obviously I own steinerranchmarketinfo.com. I have steinerranchleases.com, steinerranchopenhouses.com. I own numerous domain names of the specific sections within Steiner Ranch that I've bought because maybe I have a listing in there. Like Santa Luz is a section in Steiner Ranch. And so 2 years ago, I had like 4 listings in that section. And so I just, for $10 on GoDaddy, bought santaluzsteinerranch.com. Well, those listings are all sold now, but now santaluzsteinerranch.com points to the section on my website that's for Santa Luz. So if people want to go on and research that, they can go directly to that website. And so that's another thing that's helpful as you're putting content out there on social media. I will tell you that even my teenage daughter who babysits, I made her a secret page on my website that is averysteinersitter.com. I just bought that domain name for $10. And of course, because she's 15, I have it password protected with our Steiner Ranch zip code. But so whenever I'm on our like Steiner Ranch moms and tots page or Steiner Ranch babysitters page where people are asking for a babysitter, it's linked to my website there too. So they have to go to my website to find their Steiner Ranch babysitter. And then guess what? Those people are getting retargeted too also with my ads. So, so my daughter's making money. I'm making money. Everyone's going to my website. Just, I mean, you can post multiple domain names in multiple different places and people will bookmark that and just keep coming back to your site. So. Anybody else? Any more questions? Y'all can feel free to email me also if you have any questions later. I'm pretty open about sharing all this stuff. My email address is Elicia, my first name, at steinerranchinfo.com. So if you have any questions about any of this stuff or need me to send you any of those links again, feel free. I'm happy to share.
Sorry I couldn't be more involved talking with you, but appreciate you guys, and I'm going to link this in Tribe. I'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Elicia, you're awesome. Thank you so much for all your
Thank you, Elita. Thank
information.
you very much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Have a great week. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you so much.